In the previous video in the series, I talked about what each attribute of a vehicle means, and in this video I would like to explain the vehicle combat rules from GURPS basic set. They take up only 4 pages, from page 467 to page 470. First of all, let's start with some basic terminology. Occupants of a vehicle are composed of the operator, crew, and passengers. The operator uses his control skill to operate the vehicle, such as driving or piloting, while the crew uses their crewman skill. The vehicle acts on the operator's turn in the turn sequence, and to control the vehicle, the operator must perform a move or move and attack maneuver. Any other maneuver results in the vehicle just moving with the same speed and course it had on the previous turn. Now, let's talk about vehicle movement. I'm going to only talk about tactical movement, not overland movement. As I said in the previous video, vehicles have 2 numbers in their move statistic, acceleration and top speed. Thus, most of the vehicles will use the high speed movement rules from page 394. High speed movement rules come into play when you move at a speed higher than your basic move. For most normal characters, this means sprinting or using the enhanced move advantage, but for vehicles, it means moving at a speed higher than their acceleration. What can feel wrong at first and will probably require some time to get used to, is that you decide if you want to accelerate or decelerate at the end of your turn, and only if you have not turned more than 60 degrees, that is 1 hex side. Your velocity is increased or decreased at the end of your turn, not at the start of your next turn. You can choose to accelerate by up to your acceleration attribute. A diving flyer may add 10 times the local gravity in G's to this. When moving at high speed, you have a hard time changing direction quickly. You should move more or less forward, that is into your 3 front hexes, without changing facing. And to change direction by 1 hex side, you have to move straight ahead for a distance equal to your turning radius. There are 2 ways of calculating the turning radius, the cinematic and the realistic way. The cinematic turning radius equals your current velocity divided by acceleration in yards, rounded down. The realistic turning radius equals your current velocity squared divided by 10 yards, also rounded down. What if you want to make an earlier or a tighter turn? You have to make a control roll at -1 per full increment of acceleration, by which your velocity exceeds your acceleration. For example, if you are moving at 20 yards per second, and have acceleration 6, you must roll at -2. If you fail, you lose control. A powered, wheeled ground vehicle can decelerate by 5 yards per second per turn. An animal drawn or tracked, walking, or slithering ground vehicle can decelerate by 10 yards per second per turn. Most air and water vehicles can decelerate by 5 plus handling yards per second per turn, at a minimum 1 yard per second. These rates assume safe deceleration. You can try hasty deceleration to decrease your velocity by up to twice this number. A hasty deceleration requires a control roll, that is your vehicle control skill modified by the vehicle's handling, at -1 per 2 full yards per second beyond the safe deceleration value by which you cut your speed. For example, if you want to decelerate a car by 8 yards per second, then you must roll at -1. If you fail the roll, you lose control. Minor obstructions and bad footing cost movement points as usual, and also decelerate you at the end of your turn by an amount equal to the extra movement point paid. If this total exceeds your self-deceleration value, then you have to make a control roll as if you decelerated voluntarily. If this total exceeds your doubled safe deceleration value, then you lose control automatically. Now let's talk about what losing control actually means. I have already mentioned a few cases where control rolls are in order: sudden deceleration, tight turns, bad terrain. I will reiterate again, a control roll is a roll against your vehicle operation skill modified by the vehicle's handling. If a crash is possible, then visibility modifiers from darkness and fog apply as well. Large vehicles may require a roll against both the master's ship handling skill and the crew's average crewman skill. Use the average margin of success or failure. In addition to the aforementioned situations, you must make a control roll when your vehicle suffers knockback or major damage. GURPS basic set says that if you use a rulebook with a crash table, roll on that table. I guess this is something that was planned but never saw the light of the day. You can probably adapt a table from some other RPG system, so you will have to use effects from GURPS basic set instead. The first effect is universally applicable. Every occupant loses their aim bonuses and takes a penalty equal to the margin of failure to any attack from the vehicle until the operator's next turn. Additional effects depend on the vehicle type. If you are driving a ground vehicle, a failure by stability rating or less means the vehicle skids and does not go in the intended direction or veers randomly. You may hit something if the GM says so. If you fail by more than stability rating or roll a critical failure, then you spin out of control and crash. The vehicle rolls for a number of yards equal to 1/3 of its current velocity and suffers fall damage based on its velocity before it lost control. If you are operating a water vehicle, a failure by stability rating or less has the same effects as for a ground vehicle. In addition, anyone on an open deck must make a strength or strength-based seamanship roll, or be washed overboard. A major failure means the vehicle capsizes and possibly sinks. If you are piloting an air vehicle and fail by stability rating or less, then the vehicle loses 5 yards of altitude and decelerates by 10 yards per second. A bigger failure means an uncontrollable dive or spin. You dive at top speed each turn. Subsequent rolls to pull out are at -5. If you are piloting a space or an underwater vehicle, then a failure by stability rating or less means the vehicle does not maneuver properly and may hit something, just like a ground vehicle. Underwater vehicles also lose 5 yards of depth. On a major failure, make an HT roll for the vehicle. On a failure, it suffers a stress-related damage, a leak, engine failure, etc. Leaking vehicles use the bleeding rules, but leaks are stopped with crewmen, not first aid. That's it for movement and control. Now let's talk about attacking and defending. Occupants can use built-in mounted weapons of the vehicle, if they are manning the station. Only the operator may decide to ram an enemy with the vehicle or, if the vehicle has manipulators, punch, kick or grapple. Ramming is treated as normal collisions. Any occupant can use handheld weapons if the vehicle is open-topped, has windows or any other way to actually use the weapons. The operator can do it as a move and attack maneuver, but his control skill will be at -2. When the operator uses mounted vehicular weapons, manipulators or rams with the vehicle as a move and attack, the normal move and attack penalties do not apply. However, there are some other things that you have to remember. First of all, page 548 of GURPS basic set has a variety of penalties that are applied to ranged attacks from a vehicle. These penalties depend on the type of vehicle, road conditions, waves, the type of mount, etc. I will not list them here, there are too many of them. Second, do not forget about speed and range penalties, and keep in mind that they account for your relative speed. So if you are speeding past an immobile target at 50 yards per second, you will have a huge penalty to hit even though the target stands still. The generic penalties for shooting from a moving vehicle can be bought off with the mounted shooting technique that appeared in GURPS martial arts. The speed penalties can be lowered with the motorized training perk from GURPS tactical shooting. Any occupant who is free to move may defend against any attacks that specifically target them, but not against stray shots or shots that penetrate the vehicle and hit them. The operator can also roll against vehicular dodge to defend against attacks directed at the vehicle. Vehicular dodge is equal to the operator's control skill divided by 2 plus handling, rounded down. Vehicles have their own hit location tables on page 554 of GURPS basic set, and many hit locations have special effects. And that's it for this video. There are a lot of rules here that might take a while to get used to, and honestly, I have never had vehicle combat come up in my games yet. But I am definitely going to show off some of these rules in a combat example, hopefully in the near future. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.